Hello, welcome to the Craig's Motel. I am the concierge. My name is Conan. Today we're looking at a free plugin from Air Music Tech. But is it a free lunch at Gordon Ramsay's restaurant? Or is it fishing around in the bins outside McDonald's? Let's jump in. Okay, before we get into the plugin, quick history lesson. What is ADT? Automatic double tracking. There's a technique which recording engineers, musicians, artists, etc. have been using for years, where the vocalist will sing the song and then they will rewind the tape like they did in the olden days before the dinosaurs, and then they would re-sing it over the top to double track the vocal. And what that did is it gave the vocal a bit more depth. It sounded richer, it could sound wider, it gave you more options in the mix down. Now, let's go back to the mid-60s, many years before MPCs, or BMPC as I like to call it. There was this little band called the Beatles. You might have heard of them. And there was this guy called John Lennon. And from what I can ascertain, he was a bit bored with double tracking his vocals. So he asked the lab techs at Abbey Road if they could work out a way of making double track automatic, or double tracking so that he didn't have to actually double track his vocals. Although him and Paul did double track vocals, and George as well, obviously, but he wanted a way of doing it automatically. And this technique that this plugin emulates was invented by the lab techs at Abbey Road. Now, called lab techs, they did actually wear lab coats in those days. It was invented by a technician called Ken Townsend at Abbey Road for the Beatles, and obviously since it has then entered the music industry as a technique which has been used a lot. There are several other plugins. Waves ADT is one of the ones which I've been using for a long time. I've also been lucky enough to actually work in Abbey Road and see the actual technique being used firsthand. Absolutely amazing. I was quite starstruck. But today we're going to look at Air Music's version of the plugin for the MPC. It's also available for the software, but we're going to be looking at it in standalone today. So I wanted to touch on the history a little bit because I haven't seen anybody else touch on the history of ADT in their videos on this plugin. Let's talk about the elephant in the room quickly. Yes, I have a moustache. It's November. It's a thing. Will I shave it off at the end of November? I'm not sure. Haven't decided yet. So we'll jump into the plugin very quickly, and I'll just quickly explain how ADT was made by these technicians at Abbey Road. What they basically did is they took two reel-to-reel tape recorders. On the second reel-to-reel tape recorder, they created an oscillator which could fluctuate the speed, the pitch of the tape, and basically they ran the original tape machine into the second tape machine. This is a very basic explanation of it, and the fluctuations with the oscillator in the way that the original tape went into the second tape's record head created some fluctuations, some flutter, some wow, some pitch variations, and consequently made it sound like you had two people singing. Very slight different nuances in the vocals. Very simple technique, but very effective. And that is what this plugin basically does. So we'll go through it very quickly. We'll go through the GUI. I still feel stupid saying GUI, GUI, but GUI also sounds stupid. So we'll stick with GUI. So we'll go through the GUI very quickly. You've got 3 pages: the double tracking page, the channel mix page, and the auto tracking page. And I'll just run through very quickly how that works. You have an input for your source and you have an output for your source, as you can see here. Here you can choose left, right, left or right, and stereo in your source. And in the monitor section, you can also choose stereo or mono. I'll show you how that works. Here you can change the input level and the output level. Here you can choose whether the tracking mode is manual or whether it's auto. Here you can change the speed of the oscillator. That was the oscillator I was talking about, which makes the speed of the tape fluctuate, so making it sound like a double track. So here you can change. So you can do everything that you really need to do on the main screen. If you then go into the second screen, here you've got a bit more control over your source and the double tracking side of things. So you can change the panning, you can change the level, you can change the drive, which is nice. You can create a nice bit of saturation. You could actually just use this plugin as a saturation plugin. We'll go through that as well. Again, you have the main vary speed in the middle. You have that on all 3 pages. So that's your main control, basically, your vary speed. On this page, you can also mono the bass, and you can choose which frequency you do that down to. So everything below that frequency there, you can also solo it. We'll show you that in a second as well, just so that you can home in on the frequency that you want to mono, basically. And then if we go, let's just take that out. If we then go into the auto tracking page, here you have a bit more control over the actual modulation, the oscillator. You have your tape heads here. We'll go into this in more detail. Again, you can manual or you can auto. Here is your modulation. This is your oscillator here. So you can have the oscillator in sync. You can change the oscillator, sine, triangle, or random. If you know anything about synths and ADSR, sound design, etc., you will know about oscillation. But that's basically what that is. Here you can change the speed, and here you can change the warp. Now the warp kind of gives you that wow and flutter effect that you get with tape. So it's that kind of thing, you know. So anyway, that's how that works. Very, very simple. Here you can randomize the head, and you can also recalibrate it as well. I'll show you what all that means. It's might seem a little bit complicated, but it's actually quite simple if you just get stuck in. And it is one of those plugins that if you just get stuck into, then you can just kind of work out what it does. But basically, what you're doing is you are taking a source and you're double tracking it, and that way you kind of get a flange type sort of effect, or almost a slapback delay kind of effect if you have the range all the way up to 20 milliseconds. That is what you have here. You have 20-second millisecond range here, and you'll see what it does in a second. Now, this was designed obviously to be used on vocals, but you don't have to just use it on vocals. What I'm going to show you today is how you can use it on vocals. I'll also show you how you can use it on drums, and then at the end of the video I'll go into some of the other uses that you can use on other instruments. I'll run through some of the instruments that it's really, really, really good on. So today we'll just go through vocals. I hope that these vocals don't drive you mad, because I'm obviously going to be playing them over and over again. Let's just check my levels. So at a very, very basic level, we won't go into changing all of the sources and stuff. You can work that out for yourself. But at a very, very basic level, you can you can vary the speed. So you're changing the oscillation, etc., of your second tape machine, if you like. That's the best way to describe it. And that will be your main effect. This is where you get your main effect, basically. So you can go from this is the kind of slapback delay kind of effect, and over this side you kind of get a phasey, flangey effect. And like I said, you can change the speed. You can have it in sync or not in sync. So you can hear you're changing the speed of the oscillator there, the modulation.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would. You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would. So it's like getting a fine balance, really, of what kind of effect you want. For instance, on things like a Rhodes or an instrument with a long sustain, it can be quite fun to play around with the speed and have it quite fast. You're all that I want.
It sounds stupid on a vocal. Well, it doesn't sound stupid, it just doesn't really work for that particular vocal. But if that's the kind of effect that you want, then obviously you can use that. So let's just take that back to something normal.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would.
Just want to quickly point out, I'm not going to flick through them because it'll mess up my settings, but there's some really, really, really good presets. Air don't always provide you with really, really good presets. Some of them I just think are ridiculous, but on this one, they've got it right. And I also want to say they've got the GUI right as well. I mean, it looks fantastic. So going into the channel mix, here is where you have a bit more control over your levels and your panning, etc. on the source.
You're all that I
so you can drive it.
But this couldn't last. You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last.
Here you can also change the panning of the source. You can have it more in the central, and you can have the double track also in the center.
You're all that I wanted. wanted, but this couldn't last.
Or you can hard
I
pan.
wish that it would.
The saturation on the drive is...
And now I feel haunted by...
Shut up, woman. Is really good. It's great. I mean, it sounds amazing on the vocals.
You're all that I want.
And what's nice as well is that you have the ability to be able to drive the source and the double track effect.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last.
Push it up sort of round about 2 o'clock, you really start getting some real bite in the sound.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would.
Now that's really creating a nice bite in the vocal.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would.
You know, that's taking, I mean, that is a very, very dry kind of flat monotonic sung piece of vocal there. But what you're doing with that effect, you're taking
You're all that I wanted.
a fairly boring kind of vocal sound and
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would.
that now kind of sounds a bit punk, a bit kind of like indie rock, and just adds a real kind of bite to the vocal. So that alone, just adding the drive, and I've seen quite a few people mention this, the saturation drive on it is really, really nice, and you could just use it for that. It's one of those effects, I think, that you can use really, really subtly and just kind of add a bit of an edge to a vocal, for instance, or a bass or some drums, or you can really, really push it and create really, really crazy effects. Either way, I'm really, really liking this plugin. I know I do give Air and Akai a hard time sometimes. It's not a hard time. I'm just being honest. I'm giving my honest opinion. And, you know, they don't always get things right. And some of the coding has not been the greatest. But to cut a long story short, I really like this plugin. I use the Waves one, and I have done for a long, long time. And I use it a lot, actually, in some ways that you might not even think. But having this now in the MPC Standalone, or the equivalent of the Waves plugin, I mean, I'm very, very happy by this, and I love the fact that it's free. So then if we go into the auto tracking screen, here, okay, so we were talking about the oscillation and the 2 tape machines, etc. So here you can change things a little bit more. You can start playing around with things a little bit more.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last.
So if I go into random head here and then recal, you'll see that the left and right heads are moving slightly.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would.
I can take that out of there and I can recal it.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would.
Randomize it, recal.
And now I feel haunted by the ghosts of our past. I wish we were good.
So you can really, really play around with things and mess around with the heads. You didn't really have that kind of control on the original tape machines. I can't remember off the top of my... Yeah, you do have that. You can do that in the Waves one. So, and then obviously, like I said here, you've got the oscillator, the modulation here that you can change the shape from a sine wave to a triangle or random. So you can have a lot of fun with that as well. Can sync.
You're all that I wanted, but this couldn't last. I wish that it would.
Can see what's happening with the heads here.
And now I feel haunted by the ghosts of our past. I wish we were good.
So by having the left and right fluctuating, you're getting kind of different panning stereo field stuff going on as well. So that's really interesting. So get used to playing around with the recal, taking the randomized heads off, recalling again. It's recalibrating basically the heads, which was my first job in a recording studio at 11 years old. It's kind of what I did. I was a tape op, so I had to learn how to calibrate heads on tape machines. So that's what that window does. Gives you a lot more control over the modulation, the oscillation, etc. on the actual what would be in effect the second machine. So let's just quickly show you how you can use it on drums, what kind of effects you can get on drums. It has been, when you hear the effects, you'll realise, yes, it's been used on a lot of things. I think Ichiku Park, maybe by Small Faces, may have used it. I know that Elton John's drummer used it on a couple of his big tracks. It was a big thing in the late 60s going into the early 70s. Everyone that recorded at Abbey Road obviously wanted to use this effect, and people started using it on drums, not just on vocals, pianos, basses, saxophones, etc., etc., full choirs. Abbey Road's an amazing place, but when these little bits of technology cropped up in the late 60s, anyone that recorded at Abbey Road would then want to use those effects. So I'm sure people like Pink Floyd, etc., probably all used the effects on their albums as well when they recorded at Abbey Road. So let's just listen to some drums. That's just the drums dry. So what I was going on about with the bass mono here, by the way, because I didn't show this with the vocal earlier on, if you go into solo, you can home in on what frequency you want to mono it below. So that's very, very handy. So obviously you can make drums sound very big, very, very quickly. What you could do using it in a parallel way is just get those kind of in the center so there's no offset in the stereo field at all. Take the level right down. And just bring a little bit of the effect in. Also, want to point out you have mute buttons here as well so that you can just listen to the double tracked version or just listen to the source version. You can also flip the phase of either one as well, which sometimes has nice effects when you've got the flange on if you flip the phase. Sometimes if you're using quite bottom heavy instruments, for instance, where the frequency waves are a lot wider, a lot bigger, you can get phasing issues. So flipping the phase, you still get that flange effect, but you're not getting that kind of hollow, nasally kind of phasing issue that you can get sometimes. So it's very nice that they added the ability to be able to flip the phase there. Probably not going to notice it so much on that sound. I need really like a bit more, something with a bit more bottom end that has a phasing issue. And of course, as is always the case as well with any buttons or any things like this, you don't have to use them for what they're supposed to be used for. I'm not level matching, as you can see, and I apologise for that. It's a bit difficult too. With rhythmic sources, it tends to be better to kind of go into the minuses, so you're not getting that kind of slap back delay, which can be a little bit overwhelming with drum sounds, for instance, unless that's the effect that you want to go for. If you want that kind of flangy, dreamy, kind of psychedelic kind of sound, if you go into the minus side of things, and that's where you're almost getting that effect. I don't know if you DJ or whatever, etc., where you take two copies of the same record and play them exactly next to each other at the same speed, but then slightly change one of them, you kind of get that phasing, cancellation, phasey, flangy, phasey sound. And that's what you're getting here when you go into the minuses here. You're running, in effect, running two tapes next to each other, one very, very slightly behind the other one. Ichiku Park is the one that I think of straight away when I think of that phase and drum effect. Did they use the ADT effect at Abbey Road? I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to check, but they definitely would have used double tracking tapes played slightly behind each other. I say definitely, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain that flange pedals and things like that didn't exist then. They may have existed. I'm trying to think what year that was. Must have been about 67, 68, HQ Park, maybe 69. So I'm fairly certain that they probably used a double tape, double tracking effect. So there you have it. That was a quick look through the actual plugin and what you can do with it on drums and vocals. You don't have to just use it on drums and vocals. Like I said earlier on in the video, there are plenty of different ways to use it. It's really nice on Rhodes or piano. It's great on bass, synth bass especially. You can really get some great sounds with that. Just be careful of the phasing because you could sometimes lose some of your bottom end. So just be wary of that. If you are finding that you're losing some of the bottom end, play around with the phase buttons in the channel mix window. And what else is it really good at? Guitars, it's really good on. I've said piano, said Rhodes. I mean, you know, try it on anything, really. But vocals is what it was designed for. And most of the presets that Air have set up in the MPC or in the software do tend to be geared towards vocals. But, you know, as we all know, these rules are made to be broken. So try out the vocal presets on a drum kit, see how it sounds. What do I think of the plugin? Well, I really do think that they got this one right. I think it looks great. It sounds great. I haven't dug into any of the... Okay, so let's go pros and cons. I was going to say I haven't dug into whether there's any issues with aliasing and all that kind of stuff, but I don't really want to concentrate too much on that. I did concentrate on that with their visual EQ because I could actually hear it. That's why I wanted to point it out. In this, I can't really hear any problems. There aren't really any cons, to be honest. It's all pros. I really like the sound of it. Like I said, I really like the way that it looks. It's free. What complaints could you possibly have? So there you have it. This is the Craig's Motel. My name's Conan. Until next time, I'm sorry I haven't made a video in about a month, so I've lost that off the top of my head type sort of intro and outro that I normally do. So that's why they're a little bit different this time. Anyway, thanks for watching. I know there's probably going to be a billion videos on this plugin. So if you have watched mine, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a great day.